beginning by just reviewing the basics of what absolute value is. It's very, very simple, but for whatever reason, it's one of the things that people forget. I think it's because it's so simple that your brain doesn't actually latch on to what the concept is. And then it's hard later in the unit when we try to use absolute value in solving equations and solving inequalities. So even though today's lesson is super simple, try and be sure that you're not just blowing over it in your mind and you're actually engaging with the idea and the concept behind what absolute value is, okay? So absolute value as a definition is just this: the distance of a number from zero, like on a number line, right? Like, you don't have to write this down, but I just want to show you. So if I have a number line and it's got positive and negative numbers, it should make sense to you if I were to say -3 is the same distance from 0 as +3. That makes sense? Like if you measured the length, -3 is 3 spaces from 0, yeah? And 3 is also 3 spaces from 0. When I am saying 3 spaces from 0, that is what we're talking about with absolute value. It's the distance from 0. It's not the value of the number, because, for example, the value of -3 is -3. It's the physical distance. It's 3 spaces away. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. So that's the basic idea behind what we're doing. So on this table here, we have some situations, and we're going to represent it in integer form and absolute value form, and then talk about what its opposite would mean. So for example, in the first situation, a football team lost 45 yards on the 3rd down. If you were to describe lost 45 in number form, what would that be as an integer? You lost 45. -45. But the absolute value means, well, what's the distance of -45 from nothing, from 0? 45. So the absolute value is 45. And the opposite of -45 is +45. What would +45 mean in a football situation like this? Instead of losing 45 yards on the 3rd down. By the way, are you happy when you lose 45 yards on the 3rd down? No, right? That's not good. No, right? But would you be happy if you gained 45 yards on the 3rd down? You'd be super happy, because then you go back and you're, what, I'm not super big on football, but then you're on trying for your 1st down again, right? Like it starts over. Yeah, so that would make you happy. Okay, thank you. So then on the second example, Jonathan earned $60 mowing lawns last week. Well, how would you represent that as an integer? Is that a +60 or a -60? Plus. And are we happy when we earn $60? Yeah, +60. Thank you, Matthew. We're happy about that, right? Well, what do you think is the absolute value of 60? Just 60. And what's the opposite of a +60? -60. How could that be represented? So Jonathan, maybe he mows lawns. He has a small side business. What might be represented by a -$60 in a business situation like that? What are some things you have to do when you have a business? You have to buy stuff, right? Maybe your lawnmower needs repairs. Maybe you have to buy gas. Okay, so a -60 in that situation could represent expenses, unanticipated repairs that you have to make. Alice descended 20 feet below the surface of the ocean. What is that as an integer? -20. Good, thank you, -20. Have any of you ever been scuba diving? Yeah? 20 feet below, how far is that? The super far? It's not not really so bad when you're scuba diving, right? In a swimming pool, some swimming pools maybe you could go down 10, right? So double that's 20. You still have to be careful at 20 below, but at what point, how many feet below sea level do you start having to be really careful, for those of you who have been scuba diving? Oh, anyone who has been scuba diving. I'm feeling like 60, 70, 80. Then you've got to be careful when you come back up, because you have to be sure you have to repressurize, and I don't think that's the right word, repressurize, but you have to be careful coming back up. So 20 feet below the surface of the ocean, what's the absolute value? In this case, it wouldn't be the distance from zero, but the distance from the surface, right? And that's still 20 feet. If you were climbing on a hill above the surface of the ocean, 20 feet, that's the same distance from the surface, whether you're above or below. So take a minute and go ahead and finish out this chart, and then we'll just talk about a few of the situations, like what it means to be positive or negative. And if you're in Zoom, you don't have to copy every single word down, because you still have access to this chart. Just take a few moments to finish that out. And if you're watching the video from home, just pause now and finish filling out the chart. All right, I'm just going to quietly fill in my answers, and you can check yours with mine as I go, and then I can take questions on it then. Oh, thank you. So many things to remember. Can't do it. Just can't do it. Oh, I like the one where it says Dwight owes 0 on his credit card, because what's the absolute value of 0? How far is 0 from 0? 0. And we don't generally say that 0 is either positive or negative either. It just is. And so on this one where Elizabeth hiked 1,287 feet above sea level, the opposite integer is negative 1,287. You're not going that far below sea level as a human being. You would be crushed. I don't know if, yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Unless you're in a craft submersible that can go that far, but otherwise you're not gonna be like scuba diving to that depth. And then this last one where Carly's dog gained 10 pounds since birth. I mean, I'm going to put just technically that the opposite of that is minus 10 pounds, but not since birth, right? We're not going to go down 10 pounds since birth, not generally, unless this dog was huge when it was born and is now super sick. It's not losing 10 pounds at birth, but technically that is the opposite. So the point of this table was to bring your attention to the idea that opposite integers have the same absolute value, first of all. So -2 and 2 would have the same absolute value of +2, but also to give you some real world context about positive and negative integer values. So the second part of your notes is a wheel. I can't really turn it here on my screen, so I'll just do the best I can up here. But we're going to talk about the basic idea of absolute value. So I want to start here on, it's the left side of my screen, but if you need to, you probably should rotate. So it's this, where it says, what is absolute value? That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to write sideways. You don't have to write sideways because you can just rotate your paper. But it's what we've already talked about. Okay, so what is absolute value? It's the distance. If I can write sideways. From 0. I feel like that was a super success at writing sideways, right? It wasn't too bad. The distance from 0. And the symbol for absolute value is this. It's 2 bars. And then whatever you're taking the absolute value of goes inside. So there'll be some number in here. Number. And then moving over to the right, you have some right here. That's, if to read that out loud, the 2 symbols in with the 2 inside, you would say the absolute value of 2. And what is the absolute value of 2? 2. And so your answer is just 2 with no more bars. The bars are gone. So something I want to say about that is this. When you see the bars, you're being asked to perform that operation. Once you've decided what the answer is, the bars go away. They are gone. So, and I bring that up because a lot of times students will forget that you have to do it in the order, like when we start adding in order of operations and solving equations, just remember that once you've determined what the absolute value is, the bars are gone because you've done what they told you to do and you don't need them anymore. Okay. Then this next part, I'm here now. So you would just be rotating your paper to the right. We're right here. Okay, opposites have the same absolute value. So right here, yeah, I totally am not going to do this one. Opposite integers. So this little sentence right here, it says opposite integers. That's what's supposed to go here. Opposite integers are called inverses. And we touched on that on our chart. Meaning 3 and -3 are inverses of each other, but they have the same absolute value. So absolute value of -3 is +3. Notice how you write the 3 and the bars are gone. Absolute value of 3 is 3. They have the same answer. Okay, so negative, they are both 3 away from 0 for -3. And +3 is also 3 away from 0. And then moving to the right again, negative numbers have positive absolute value. So on my screen, I'm here on this side. So we'll just do this real quick. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. The absolute value of -4? Absolute value of -15? And absolute value of -100. So that section's just reiterating that negative numbers still have a positive absolute value. And then on this very last section, the examples, of course, you can rotate your paper. I'm gonna do it upside down. Well, you fill in yours real fast and then we'll talk about it. So we're on this example section. You do those. Dang it. Pause the video if you're watching from home and do that bottom section. if you're doing from home and you don't have a printout, I'm sorry that this is upside down. Just use your device to go see what the PDF says, and you can flip it, and I apologize. So this one that was upside down was absolute value 5, which is 5. And then the middle one was absolute value of 9, which is 9. Absolute value of negative 10. I feel like, I'm sorry, making you do this section. It's like I'm done. Absolute value of 2 is 2. Am I frozen? No. Okay. Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2. I'm pretty sure we all get the point. There's extra like little practice problems around the edges. I'm not going to talk about those. I'm sure we're all good. But this is the point of the lesson where I can tell you, in my experience, your minds go, okay, we get it. It's always a positive number, please. But when we, again, like I said, when we start moving into equations and inequalities, that's what you're going to forget. You're going to be like, what does it mean with the bars again? So just remember this day when it was super easy, and then remind yourself of it when we start doing equations.